Hi everyone. Okay, so it is extremely late for me. I usually don't do videos late, but I'm awake and I don't think I'm gonna go to sleep soon. And I had some thoughts, so that's why I'm doing the video. Um, and as usual, I guess, they're kind of in the legal field, so um, but it might bounce around a little, so I just want to let you guys know that. Okay. Well, I I'm always thinking, right? So, I use these videos as like a release of everything in my head. Well, most of what's in my head, so that you know it doesn't overwhelm me because, yeah, I I do a lot. I I I have my usual responsibilities, and then I watch soaps and I comment on them a lot. And then I watch trials, and it's funny. Um, Once you're hooked into something, you get really hooked because I started with one trial, and then I went on to the next trial, and the next trial, and the next. And now, when there's a break in between big trials, I've noticed I'll watch anything. Like, as far as like in the law, it's really interesting. Um, so I guess that's kind of my interest. Um, but I didn't really know it until I finished my first trial, which was really kind of devastating because the subject matter was just like, oh my god. But everybody everybody in LawTube was covering it. So um, once I started following it, which it was the Maya Kowalski trial, I covered it a little bit, but it was my first one, so I didn't follow it every day. Um, and now I follow it every day. Like whenever I'm following something, I follow every day. Um, but it was kind of heartbreaking, and then it made me like mad, really mad, and I wanted justice for this girl, and it's the first time I ever felt like I felt bad for someone I didn't even meet or know, or and you know I don't mean to say that I don't have empathy. It's just I've never felt that emotion of kind of feeling exactly what she must have felt and wanting everything good for her, you know? Because I also put myself in at her age when all this stuff started, which was like 10 years old. It was it was like wow. um and and then I followed let's see. Then I followed the Hannah Gutierrez Reed trial, and I followed the Alec Baldwin trial for all of 3 days when that came up. And I've followed countless others since then. Um, and the last one that made me feel bad for the person again was Karen Reed because and I've talked about it a lot. I know, but I I never felt another thing that was just like I never had the feeling of, oh, this feels so wrong. There has to be a problem here until this case. I mean, until that case, I'm always skeptical of, you know, because I think I've always known that I never know. You never know the whole story. And so I'm like, okay, wait until the facts come out and then see. Because, yes, I have initial impressions on things. But like I said, I follow the facts and then I go, okay, does that line up with what I originally thought? And if it's way off base, I'm like, okay, let's think about this again. And that was, I think her case was the first time I didn't second guess myself because I was like, no, this is wrong. And it was visceral. My reaction to her situation was completely visceral, you know. Um, so, and then to keep it current, which is really strange. Um, and I know this is going to be a jump from whatever, and I don't mean to tie it in. It just kind of is. Um, Adam Lally, the prosecutor of her first trial, it was on the stand last week because of the shoddy investigation that his office did in the next case, Miles King, I think. Um, and I was like, I wasn't if I hadn't been introduced to the Karen Read case, I would have been astonished, flabbergasted at the lack of care, empathy, but like empathy for people because of your job, you know. Um, okay, to give you an example, another ADA from the same office asked him like pointed questions, and his answers most of the time were, I don't know, or I, I don't know, I'm not sure. I think he said, I don't know, at least 10 times. And whenever she asked something like, well, didn't you check up on, you know, like, because the main point of him being on the stand is because in the case, before it became a case, um, first of all, I have to give you a little background, okay? The original thing started in 2021. And for some reason, I don't know all the details, but for some reason, he needed 6 affidavits, right? Okay, so how it goes is they get the affidavits from the police and they give them to the then they have to sign them and they have to give them to whoever, right? Okay, so she asked about his process and if he kept a list and, you know, how do you know if something was outstanding and how do you keep track of all that? And he said, well, yeah, I just kind of knew what was outstanding, so I knew what I didn't have. And then she says, well, how do you know you knew what you didn't have? And his answers were just spotty. And then the I don't knows came in. And then the I'm not sure came in. And I'm like, wow. And here's the main point of all this. At the end of the day, they weren't done with everything they wanted to ask him. So he's going to be back on the stand on August 5th, Tuesday, next Tuesday. So that's the reason why I didn't cover it yet, because I was waiting to see what was going to happen in the second part of this. And because right now, my initial impression is something feels wrong again. And it feels like this happens to be it seems to me like a systematic problem, and but I'm not entirely sure that yet. So, but that's what my initial impressions are, you know. Yeah. So that happened, and it was just like, wow. I couldn't believe. I mean, I could believe it, but I couldn't believe it because also another one that's tied to this is the former trooper Michael Proctor. Um, y'all know by now that he was this he was fired from his job because of his lack of investigation and his lack of just professional attitude in the Karen Reed case. I'm not gonna go back over the he said some horrendous thing in text message, but yeah, that really happened. So I find it kind of ironic, but not really. So then, you know how I've tried to explain to you how my mind works. I start with a question. Well, I start with a lot of questions because I come from a journalistic background. When I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a journalist. I wanted to be another female journalist, in the field. And then my other dream, beside that, was I wanted to work for my big local paper. Um, you know, and so not that I changed my mind. It's just I didn't think about it after college because I got a degree in English literature because I wanted to be a teacher. So, um, but because of the journalistic background, and I've always kind of thought about this since I was a kid. They taught me really early the 5 questions: who, what, why, where, when, and sometimes how. And they say sometimes because you don't always know how something is done or how, like, say you're talking about a crime. You don't always know how it was committed. But if you can answer 4 of the 5 questions, or the who, what, why, where, when, the who, what, why, where, when, you're pretty good, you know. So I always start with that. I start with the who, and that's pretty much a given because it's always so and so versus, or the state versus so and so. Okay, so the person's name gives you who it possibly is, and then you figure out everything else as you go along. Um, So yeah, my mind starts with the okay, so what supposedly happened here, and let's go from there. And then whenever there's a missing piece in this, like in the puzzle, I always wonder why. And then my dad taught me a couple of years ago. Actually, it's been a while, but like actually in practice a couple of years ago, of like go down the tree of why. If you want to know the answer to something, it usually can be found in the tree of why. Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, so and so happened. Why? Well, so and so or so and so. Okay, why? And you keep going down, down, down. And at the base of it, the root, you'll probably get your answer if you have to go that far. Now, sometimes you don't have to go too far down that tree. So that's how I operate. And yeah, it served me well in like what I do now. And like, especially in the cases, because like whenever I'm doing a case or a trial, um, I always go down the tree. I always try to answer all the questions. And if there's ever like a hole, I want to try to fill it, fix it, you know. And it's not always a given, but I try my best. And then I give all my knowledge to you guys because I'm trying to educate as much as I can. Because I don't think that certain areas of education or whatever should be scary or unattainable. So that's what I'm trying to do here. And trying to have a little fun along the way. So, you know, but never at the expense of someone else. All right, just a couple of thoughts I was having. All right, bye guys.